did anybody look at the recording that we did the last time that I posted to YouTube?
No.
No, okay. I'm just learning how to do that. It was Cecilia's recommendation or suggestion that we try doing that. It was fairly easy, and I've already forgotten how I did it. But my main objective was to get the file size down to some reasonable file size. Our 2-hour meeting ends up being like a half a gigabyte or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
did you succeed in getting it down?
I think so, yeah. And I'm looking at shoulders with no name on it and a chin, and I'm guessing that that might be Ray.
Is that?
I'm here.
Okay, lean the camera up a little bit, because otherwise, unless you want to hide your eyes.
Well, I'm having trouble getting the screen the way I want it.
Okay, as all of us do.
Jerry, I just got a message that says that some people are waiting to enter. Can you figure that out?
You should, yeah, you shouldn't be getting that message, but let me see. Where the heck do I do this then? Wait a second.
I've got a North Bay Electric Association logo that's taking up all my screen, almost all of it. I can't.
Yeah, that's. I just have the presentation there right now. I can stop
Right.
sharing my screen.
Ray, you can grab the line between that and the small pictures and slide it, and you can make the different sizes fit.
Hey, does anybody know how to? Alan, you're getting a message that they can't enter, but I can't see that there's anybody asking to join, and there's no limitation on who can join.
You know what? Maybe it was just a quick one. When somebody was just starting to get on, and now it's all taken care of, because I haven't got the second one.
Okay, the only one who wanted to was David, and what I've discovered, I was just going to mention this for those of us who run the meeting. If you use the waiting room, I haven't found a way to let people in. It says, according to the help, that you can let everybody in or one at a time if you want to keep it private. But what I did was I disabled the waiting room, and that allowed all of you to join without me admitting you.
Yep, looks normal here now.
Okay, good, good. So how are we doing on time here? Oh, we're at 10:02, so let's get the meeting started. Okay, and I'm looking around. I should set this up in such a way that I can actually see two things at one time. Thanks. All right, here we are today. It's June 13th. Part of what David and I were talking about was hopefully when we get to July, maybe we can all wear masks and show up at the shop and eat donuts once at a time and talk to each other sideways. Since the restaurants are starting to open up and stuff, we recognize the risk is still there, but this gives us an opportunity to get back together again. And hopefully I can get the camera by then from just going back over.
We would need the input from John and Bryan about.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. And John, one of the things that when we get back to the shop, we should get a set of my computers online or whatever computer we're using, so that we can Zoom with other people. I hope that's okay. Okay, we always start with our introductions, and I have the list of names behind me back here, so I'm sorry. Alan, your name is first on my list here.
Okay, Alan Soule. I'm sorry, but my computer decided to go on a permanent vacation 2 days ago, and I'm on my phone now, so I'm not altogether there. But anyway, Alan Soule and I drive a Tesla Model 3 and a Roadster.
David, you got here first.
Hi, Dave Eacock from Fairfield. I have a 85 Avante that I converted to 100% electric.
Okay. Then there's me. I'm Jerry Glazer.
Jerry, could you ask everybody to mute while this is going on, because I'm getting other noises and stuff.
Okay, fine. Everybody heard that, right? You all know how to mute and unmute and stuff like that, right? Okay, I'm Jerry Glazer. I drive now a 2018 Nissan Leaf, nice car. Before that, I drove a 2011, and before that, we had a Honda EV Plus, and I rented a Think for 2 months, and I have a scooter in the garage, but I realized that I don't do scooters, and after cracking the helmet a couple of times, it's staying in the garage. And as you all know, the other experience, I'm doing this so that Bryan can get an idea of some of the experience people have too. I spent 5 years working on electric buses and trucks that are still rolling out. And in fact, I heard from that company, John, I heard from them, they've now rolled out over 100 buses and trucks and have more on order. I'm surprised. And my stock might be worth something eventually. Okay, I wish this short list wouldn't change on me. Andy, you're next on the list right now. I may have to do this differently.
Yeah, I'm Andy Ferguson, and I'm driving a Model 3, and we've got a Volt too.
Okay. I keep shorting. Brad.
Hi there, my name is Brad Morrison. I don't drive an electric car, but I'm just generally interested in them. And I actually drive a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid.
Ah. And that one doesn't plug in, right? So,
No, it doesn't plug in.
Yeah. It's interesting, Brad, that you joined us. One of the things that I was going to talk to Cecilia about was to put on our webpage that we'd enjoy people joining who don't drive EVs, that want to learn about EVs and get plugged into the things that we talk about. And we spend a lot of our time, you'll see it in the presentation, talking about environmental issues as well. Andy's been helping us with heat pumps and do solar and a bunch of other things too. But yeah, it's an open forum. Bryan, we'll let you're on my list here, so you might as well introduce yourself, and then we'll have you when you're doing the presentation.
Good. Well, good morning. I'm Bryan Albee, manager of Sonoma County Transit. I'm happy to attend your meeting today. And we're getting into electric buses. I myself don't have an electric car, but I suspect sometime in the next maybe 5 years.
Oh, good. All right. Hey, by the way, your audio is not that good so far. So if there's something you can do, because you're going to be giving the presentation, so let's see if we can work that out. Bruce, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm Bruce Nyden. I lived in Bodega Bay for 17 years. I was a member of the North Bay Electric Auto, and now I'm up in Brighty Harbor, Washington full-time. I drive a Model 3 is mostly my get-around car, but I have a pristine Audi e-tron as a backup, and I'm thinking of putting that up for sale and waiting for the next pickup truck.
Okay, great. I have one here that says she's the he/her, and I don't have the screen in front of me with faces, so I can't tell who that is. And by the way, you can change your name if your name didn't come out right. And it's one of the things you can click on.
Hello.
Oh, now I know who it is.
I drive a Model 3. I live in West County. I don't drive 3 as much as I'd like to right now, but yeah.
So, why don't you change your name on you know how to do that on the screen?
I do know how to do that.
It's under participants and right next to your name. I think there's a place where you can
I do know how to do
click
it.
more. Yeah. Okay. The other David. Where are you?
I've got to unmute myself.
Okay, good move.
I've got a 2011 SL Leaf that I bought new, and so I've had it for over 9 years, 94,000 miles plus. I'm down to 5 bars, and I'm interested in finding out people locally who replace battery packs other than the dealer, which is now $8,000 for a
Whoa.
replacement 24K battery pack. So with a range of 30 miles, my driving is short-lived, and but I charge it once or twice a day to do my daily rounds.
And David, that's the same issue many of us ran into with the early Nissan Leafs. And I was challenged also. I could not find a place, even if I wanted to pay $8,000 to get the pack replaced. One of the things I was going to put on the deck this week, because I'm interested in it, was about used cars. And used EVs are not useful unless we can repower them for some of those battery packs. 77% of the cars registered, new cars or car registrations for sales in California are used cars each year. Only 23% is new cars. So we need to address the used car market eventually. Sorry about that. I'm going on. Ellen, it's nice to see you join us on the Zoom. Ellen, you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself? Maybe not. Two more tries. If you jump in on top of somebody, it'll be fine, Ellen. John, let's have you.
Unmute. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Palmerly. I work at Thunderstruck Motors for a few years now. We produce do-it-yourself kits and products for people doing conversions of all sorts, from sailboats, cars, and other things. So, is that my audio doing weird stuff?
Yep, a little bit.
Okay, I don't know what to do about that. But anyway,
Okay.
I drive a converted Geo Metro that has a Nissan Leaf motor in it, which is really, really cool. It drives like a Tesla. Anyway, yeah, that's an overstatement. But anyway, I also have a pickup that my daughter and I converted to electric that's going to get another Leaf motor in it soon. Yeah, and my daughter has my daughter who helped me convert it also has a Chevy Bolt that's she bought used. There are used EVs to buy, and they're available, and they can be a really good deal.
Repowered, yeah. Are you guys doing any repowering for people on conventional or on production vehicles?
What do you mean?
Put a new battery pack in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We have the ability to do the Leafs, but we just can't get to it because we don't have shop space, and we also right now we have no time. It's just so.
Okay.
With the virus, we are just getting so much work. It's just kind of amazing. Everybody wants to do their projects, you know.
Yeah. All right, Mark.
This is actually, I'd like to interject. This is Woody, and I think I know what the audio issue is. First, Brian and Ellen are both not muted, but I think the issue is actually that, Jerry, when others are speaking, I think the echo is coming through you. So I think you need to just remember every time you pass it off to someone, just click mute, mute yourself every time. I think that's the problem, because it's not, the audio problem was not just with Brian, it's with everybody that tries to speak. So I think if you try muting when others are speaking, that might help things.
All right.
A good way to do that is you put yourself on mute, and all you have to do is press the space bar when you want to speak.
It's on my iPad, June, so I can't press the space bar.
All right, I guess I'll go ahead. It's Mark Brumbaugh. I drive a 2013 Toyota RAV4 EV. It's been a great vehicle for the last 3.5 years I've owned it.
And Mike? Mike Newell? There you go.
Yeah, I tried to use the space bar trick. Hi, everybody. Mike Newell, 2011 Leaf. So, David, you and I are in the same camp, just hanging in there, not having to drive too many miles. So I think I'm going to get 10 years on the first pack. Anyway, morning.
Ray.
Ray Alden here. I've been driving 100% electric since 1992. I'm on my fourth car, which is a Tesla 2018 Tesla Model S, which I own, but my daughter drives in order to take me where I have to go.
Okay, Sonia.
Hi, everybody. This is Sonia. I have a Tesla Model 3, 2019, and I'm curious to see how many miles I'll get for the year. And then we also have a 2014 Chevy Volt that we're playing that game where we're trying to get up to 250 miles per gallon or something like that on it. And before that, we had the 2012 Nissan Leaf, so I empathize with those of you who have those short miles. It's a great car if you can get it to go a little further. So that would be fun to kind of explore in future months.
Tor.
Yeah, hey, this is Tor Allen. I have a 2017 Bolt, which releasing, and the dealers just keeps telling, bring it back in. We got people want to buy used Bolts, but our lease is expiring in August, and we found out that we can extend it for 2 months at a time, up to 6 months. So we'll probably do that, buy us a little time for transitioning to another vehicle. And my
Sally? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Model 3. So, no, a Model S rather, a used one. So,
Sally.
So this is actually Steve Bertlebow. I'm using my wife's computer and looking forward to Bryan. I don't have an electric vehicle. I drive a Prius, a 2004, and it looks like it's going to run another 8 years.
That's good. By the way, as I mentioned before, if you want to, you can use your wife's computer on the bar right there next to your name. There's a more, and you can change your name so everybody knows who you're talking. Woody, June.
Good morning, everyone. Woody Hastings and June Brichers here. And we're juggling computers this morning, so we don't have our webcam things set up. But anyway, we drive a 2013 Chevy Volt that is going into the shop on Monday because we're having all kinds of trouble with it. It's been a long time since it's been in the shop, and it's actually not taking a charge right now. So we're real curious to find, we're getting a high voltage warning and so we're curious to find out what the issue was. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll find out what it has to do with the 12-volt battery, because that's exactly what I got on my Nissan Leaf, which was brand new. I got it 4 times. I kept telling it was the 12-volt system, not the high energy system, because that runs the computers. And Ellen, you're still not able to get on. Well, it says you're not muted. Can you say anything? Oh, good.
Hi, I'm here. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm driving a 2019 Leaf, and I love it.
Don't you have a 2018?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Do I?
Yeah,
Maybe.
You bought it before me. So, yeah.
Okay, 2018.
All right, very good.
All right, this is 2020. Yeah, 2018.
Okay, did I miss anybody? Okay, in that case, let's go on to the next slide. Chapter business. I haven't changed the slide at all. Basically, we have the same number of names so far. I think we added 1 member maybe in the last month. Oh, wait, I missed Lowell. Wait a second. Didn't I, Lowell? Are you still there? He was on, and now he's not on. Okay. All right. And the group site is still there, and we have a spreadsheet which has a list of all the names. So if you want to contact somebody in the club individually and they want to share the email address, it's sitting there in the spreadsheet. We did create the discussion group, NBEAA Discuss. 20 people joined. When I checked several days ago, there were no posts so far. So John was nice enough to send a post and start a discussion. Oh, Lowell, you are there. You want to introduce yourself? We don't lip read, so you have to get off mute.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm unmuted. I have two electric cars, a 2013 Nissan Leaf and a 2014 Tesla Model S. And like everyone else, I'm not driving a whole lot. But you know, I wanted to. I've gotten tremendous mileage out of the presentation Sonia did several sessions ago, in which she, you know, showed the selection of possible cars that that a person could, and person after person has approached me and said, I'm interested in an electric car, and I passed on the presentation, and it's and several of them have actually gone ahead and bought a car. That presentation is getting a little out of date, and I have, you know, more opportunities to use it. So I think it would be a good thing to have a something you could hand off to people that was a kind of a buyer's guide, you know, that was from our point of view, that kind of helped them make the decision. Anyway, just passing that down.
Well, you know, I should point out, remember, PlugShare has a pretty good, and they do keep it up to date, list. And later in the presentation here, I'll show you part of what we have in the news about what's happening with EVs.
Okay.
Jerry, did you mean PlugShare or Plug in America?
Oh, I've been Plug in America. I'm sorry, Alan. Thank you for the correction.
Plug in America. Okay.
Yeah. Oops. And in fact, I used to keep the link up on the list all the time. But okay. Hang on, I got to change a couple of screens here so I can see what's going on. Like I mentioned earlier, we did post the last meeting to YouTube, and if nobody's watched it, either it didn't work, but you can try with this presentation when I post it, try the link again and see if it works. I created a channel as well. And the channel will only work after we have 3 postings. I only put the 1 up there. And then we'll be searchable and things like that. I made the videos private to start with. I think I might have changed them to public. So if you have the link, you can get it. If you don't have the link, you can't get it. So you can't search for it. I need to write down the instructions on how to do this. Or if somebody else wants to do it this time, fine, they can write down the instructions. I'm into the events. And I haven't looked at this since I did part of this. Oh, yeah. Did you send this to me, Alan?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't look familiar.
Okay. In any case, there's an incentive program in place for the Sonoma Coast for purchasing or installing publicly available EV chargers. And it surprised me. Oh, yeah, Sonoma Clean Power is involved in this because I know they went from the incentive program for the vehicles to now an infrastructure program that they're supporting for this year. And this is from the 3 different groups. It's up to $80,000 for a DC fast charger and $7,500 for level 2 connectors. Woody, you want to handle this slide?
What's that?
You want to handle this slide?
Right. Yes, 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 sure. Okay, thanks very much. Yes, thank you. So folks, we have a new gas station proposal. It's the one, you know, we've got 4 of them actually, but this is the one at Highway 12 and Llano Road, just between, you know, Sebastopol and Santa Rosa. And it's coming up on July 2nd at the county's Board of Zoning Adjustments. This proposal is in unincorporated Sonoma County, so it's not in any of the cities. And there is a June 26th deadline for written public comments, and then on July 2nd, the hearing itself is going to be a virtual meeting, but there will be an opportunity. There will be an opportunity. Ellen McKnight, you're not muted, and your noise is coming through. And so anyway, public comment, and we are information. It's not, yeah, it is here. Good. Our website, we just fired that up recently. So the website is there where we have an action alert that you can click on that has all the information about who to write to and whatnot. And then, but also this coming Thursday, bright and early, 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., we are going to converge via bicycle, because there's really no safe place to park at the location, Yana Road and Highway 12, for a demonstration opposing the gas station. So if you are so inclined to hop on a bike and come out there, please do. I know not everybody can do that, but you know, if you can, you know, please do. So that, I think, is the long and short of it. And I'm happy to take any questions if folks have questions, or if you want to contact me. Oh, that's an old email address that I do not use anymore, whastings@earthlink. Please don't try emailing that. I am at woodyhastings@gmail.com. So yeah, woodyhastings@gmail.com.
Hey, Woody, then you should look at some of the communications that you sent out. I took that off of one of the emails you sent recently.
Really? That I haven't used that email in like 10 years.
Yeah, I forgot where I found it, but yeah, it was on one of the pages. That's where I constructed this.
Wow, that's really something. Okay, well, thanks for pointing that out. It's an old email address. Okay, any questions or?
Alan, you're on mute if you're going to ask a question.
Oh, I thought Woody, is that 7:30 a.m. or p.m.?
A.m.
Okay.
Okay, and also I'd point out that there's a couple of links down below with news articles from both the Sierra Club and from the paper talking about Congas.
Thanks very much for the time on the agenda. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondered. Oh, had we submitted our comment? Is that in there by the June 26th deadline? Didn't we produce a comment?
The North Bay Auto Association has previously sent a comment, and I would be happy to work with Jerry or Alan or anyone to get a sort of a current letter in. It could maybe reference the previous letter that it was sent in 2019, sometime I would think in the late summer or fall of 2019. So I think, you know, maybe a little updated letter that just reaffirms the opposition. I think it would be great. We're also thinking of just doing a sign-on letter. So we're probably going to resolve that in the next 24 hours. So if we do a sign-on, the NBEAA could just be, slap its logo on the sign-on letter, make it real easy. So I'll confer offline with Jerry or Alan or whoever wants to.
That's good. One of the things I just want to point out is that we created a collaboration group called NBEAA-Press for people to join who would work on this kind of thing. Either this, letters to the editor, answering questions people have asked that are public. Alan used to have that as the load all the time, and hopefully we'll get some other people to volunteer to help Alan with that. You're still the center guy on this, Alan. So.
Okay, got it. And Woody, I'd be happy to work with you on it.
Thank you.
Okay. News. This is some leftover stuff from the last meeting where we didn't get a chance to get through it. My screen just went dead with the presentation on it. That's fine. And it just was some details on how the various vehicles are performing and what's happening with them. So if you want, when you come back to the presentation, I'll have it posted and you can look this one over. And there's a link down at the bottom on this one as well that shows you where the data came from. It's kind of interesting looking at the cost for them, the credits, and what the features are. This was a nice summary. I think either Alan or Sonia had sent this to me at one point. Same thing happening here. Production vehicle statistics, comparing the prices with the range, and then the range with the prices. It's interesting because there's not always a correspondence between the range and the prices, and Just more on that from some of the other things. This also was left over from our last meeting. This is an energy breakdown that we covered last year of how energy is used here in the U.S. And the 2019 numbers were sent to us. Alan, I think when you were out of the country, we covered 2018. I like this graph because it does a really nice job of showing where do we get our power from, and then how is our energy consumed. And you'll notice that between 2018 and 2019, there's not a lot of changes. So I overlaid one with the other. We'll see that we are moving away from the fuel areas more into electric, and the distribution now, it turns out residential is starting to do better and better. We're not seeing so much in industrial, and transportation is moving very slowly. I think transportation is unchanged. But this is a great chart that's done by Lawrence Livermore. And I found it really worthwhile when you're trying to think about if you're being a provocateur or you're working on initiatives, where should we focus? Everybody understand how it works? I see John's looking at it really closely. Any questions? No, you're on. Okay, fine. All right, right-sizing charge stations. This was an interesting article also. We've been talking more and more about higher and higher powered charge stations. But here was a thought, and having worked in the industry, the major cost for getting DC out turns out often not to be the station itself or getting a high power. It's getting a service to the location. For somebody like me with my Nissan Leaf, at 20 to 24 kilowatts for the travel that I do in my Leaf, that works really well. If I had 150 kilowatts, I probably can't use it. Even 50 kilowatts, I probably can't use. And I find most of the stations are running at this. These are become a lot less expensive because it costs so much less to put the infrastructure in place. So this is actually a push to have a lot more DC charge stations, but not have them at the very high power.
Yeah, the point of this article, Jerry, was that maybe if we went up to like 20 kilowatts, people would, it would be much more appealing to people for convenience charging. Like if you went to a store or a theater or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for throwing that in. That basically was it. And you're talking about, I'm going to be someplace for half an hour. 24 kilowatts, you know, I got 50 miles worth of range.
Right, right.
Hydrogen production plant, I think you sent this to me too, Alan.
I
in
did.
Lancaster.
Yeah.
You want to talk to it?
Yes, fine. It's sort of interesting because, as you probably remember, I'm not a real proponent of hydrogen as a fuel, largely because it's 95% of the hydrogen made in the country now is made with natural gas. So to see this company has come up with a process that uses some, they call it plasma heating, and it disintegrates recyclable paper into hydrogen and does not have any products that would be greenhouse gases. So of course, it's a net energy plus net energy process. So I like that. To me, that makes a lot of sense. And the city of Lancaster, which also happens to be where BYD electric buses is where it's going to be located.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the early CCAs as well. What you're seeing here is the waste treatment itself. And as a sustainability commissioner, that was one of the things I had studied for a while down in Sunnyvale. For this type of, and that's essentially what they said in this article too, was that if they end up with hydrogen out of it, that's really great. The city decided the investment was worthwhile because they needed to dispose of refuse, and this is one of the best ways from a burning point of view because it has the least byproduct.
that's a good point. Now that China's not taking our recyclables anymore.
Right, and that was the point. Here was something, sorry, Brian, I had this in the deck before I saw your deck. But Wenatchee, Washington, which I know fairly well, having worked in the food industry, has now completed 50 megawatt hours of wireless charging with their bus system, their local bus system. And Brian will probably talk a little bit about this when he gets into what he's planning on doing. And it's opportunity charging when they go to each one of the stations if you stop for a while. Here in Sebastopol, for instance, when they finish the route, they're sitting down by the movie theater for some period of time. And I gather with this kind of thing, with inductive charging, when they're either waiting because they're trying to get back on schedule, or they're picking up passengers, that they're charging it. And what I found interesting about this was that they haven't dropped below 90% state of charge on their 14-hour schedule. So they're getting enough charge. It really floored me out of the inductive to keep running the buses. They stay full most of the way around.
Another thing, sorry, Jim.
Wenatchee's not that big.
Well, but still, what in reading this article, it came up with an idea that the apartment charging is a real problem, but why couldn't you put in the underground hardware for wireless charging in virtually every parking spot in an apartment parking lot, and then just have it served by a few amount of EVSEs that would be smart, that could switch from one parking spot to the next automatically. It sure seems that would take care of a huge problem in apartment charging.
Yeah, I saw an article about a year ago, and there's some aftermarket systems that are actually available that you can install. I don't know if anybody's done it. We'll come back to the apartment thing in a second too, because I have some articles on that. Roadside assistance. You know, the tow truck would bring. You sent this one right?
I did, yes.
Okay, why don't you talk to it then?
Okay, so this Spark Charge company is opening up some pilot programs in San Francisco and Los Angeles that will, they're partnering with some towing company that when an EV driver runs out of charge, they can go out with this modular system from Spark Charge and pump some juice back into the car. The base, it's a modular system that I guess you could call it the head of the portable charger is the charging aspect of it, and then the base is the battery, and the batteries are modular. They show a photo in the company's website of 3 of the modules on top of each other. Each module is only 3.2 kilowatt hours, but if you put 3 together, then you have approximately 10. So it's something that could work out pretty well, because people, I'm sure the more EVs that come out, there's going to be as many people that run out of charge as there are people that run out of gas. So could be a good thing.
This one, I found, I think you might have sent it to me, Alan, but I wanted to talk to it because I'm interested in it for a number of reasons. Sebastopol is a small town, but more than 50% of our population rents. When I lived in Sunnyvale, 177,000 people, 52% of the people in the city rented, and a lot of them park on the street. So as a planning commissioner, we would always be talking about on-the-street parking, off-street parking, but there's a lot of on-street that we take use of. And I saw this in Europe, that they were installing on light poles. Well, in LA, they've begun installing on light poles too. And since most of us are converting as initiatives, even here in Sebastopol, and we did it in Sunnyvale, from the various forms of electricity going to light poles, they've gone to LED. So there's a good-sized circuit handling those poles. And so there's enough room there then to have charging available. In Europe, you can just go up with your card and you park, and the parking fee and the charging fee are both in the same place. So LA has put in 130 of them so far. It's $1 to $2 an hour. There's no parking fee in that case. They're just charging. And they're targeting, this part didn't make sense to me. They're targeting 100,000 new EVs by 2025, but they have also in their city plan, 25% of the vehicles by 2025 will be EVs, 80% by 2035, and 100% by 2050. So this is all part of the promotion of EVs. And the reason I wanted to talk to this was I was wondering if the club at some point might be interested in promoting with cities, changing zoning so that private charging can be put on city streets, because that's one of the things that would be handy to have. So, and it has to do with the zoning, because the zoning has to allow for those kinds of things to occur. A friend of mine wrote to me because of my experience with Motive, and he said, "Was this the company you were with?" And I said, "No," and I didn't know this company. Do other people know this company? Nicola?
Yes, they've been in the news quite a bit.
As of this week, yeah.
As of this, well, they went public this month. They do both hydrogen fueled and they do battery systems. The reason they were in the news was that they ordered 40,000 kilograms per day worth of hydrogen equipment so that they can start putting stations throughout the country to handle 60,000 pound vehicles. Their range is 500 to 750 miles on refueling. And so long haul could end up being done with hydrogen. And as Alan said, there's no slide coming up on hydrogen. So, you know, there are some issues with it, but this is better than gasoline. As you all know, I like to fly, and I keep trying to explain that aviation is getting into electric as quickly as it can. This is a Cessna 208B, which is about 7-seater, 9-seater, 7-seater rather. So this is the largest plane now flying all on batteries. They're using a different motor. I'm sorry that Caleb's not here because he started looking at this motor too. And this is a motor out of Australia with a higher efficiency electric motor that they wanted for aircraft. And so they're now demoing different aircraft. They did it in Havilland Beaver before. It's a 750 horsepower EV motor, so fairly chunky. Eviation, which I think is an Israeli company, is using this motor as well on a 9-seat regional. And then we're going to see some more things in aviation. There are fuel cells and hydrogen because of the higher energy density that you're going to find that the fuel cells and the hydrogen that are being used. There's a 20-seat proof of concept aircraft being completed in the next 3 years by one of the companies. And then they plan on doing a 50-seat 500-mile range. That 500-mile range turns out to handle something like 75% of the flights, the commercial flights in the United States.
But Jerry, there's some issues with this. This topic was covered in that seminar I went to in February.
Yeah.
To get that kind of range, you have to go cryogenic, and that there's some real fueling issues with going cryogenic.
One of the things is I saw it in the same article, one of the articles, Airbus working on hybrid designs. About 10% of the fuel is used taxiing out to the runway, or some large percentage. If you have electric batteries to run the wheels, that would help. And then also, if you spin up the wheels before you land, you wouldn't have to replace the tires so quickly or often on aircraft. And there's lots of training aircraft now being sold and delivered that are electric because it's now made flying more economical again. Okay, I saw one article, and this actually came from, oh boy, I forgot. It's one of the charging companies. I lost the name now. I'll get it in a second. Anyway, there's 35 new EVs being introduced in the next 2 years. Now, the one in the center is the one I want to get, but it's not available for another year. And here's the list of EVs. It was Blink, that's right. So Blink covered each one of these vehicles. They took the time to send this out. It's kind of an interesting link to go through to see what people are doing. We're going to see some economical. They covered mostly luxury vehicles, and some of them are really interesting as far as what's going to be able to do. COVID-19 impact. Alan or Sonia, did you send this to me?
I think I sent it.
Yeah. You want to speak to it?
Sure. You know, I think originally, you know, we were discussing kind of amongst ourselves that the U.S. gasoline demand went way down as of shelter in place. The graph on the right is kind of post shelter in place a little bit, and it kind of shows that as you're coming out of it, you might decide in a really urban area to be safer if you have the choice to stop using public transit and get into a private car. And that's kind of what has been driving the driving miles in China. So if we watch that V on the left in the US come back up, I don't know if we have the type of urban setting where we'll see the driving miles exceed where we used to be. I kind of doubt it, but it'll be interesting to watch. And Alan, I don't know if you had more comments on that.
Not really. What I just pointed out is that graph starts after, as you mentioned, after the Chinese open back up. So it's a direct comparison of how many miles driven starting in January for the US and starting in the end of February in China isn't a real apples to apples comparison.
This one came in too. I thought this was interesting, just talking about COVID and the atmosphere. Just look at it. This is the satellite pictures of what happened between pre-shutdown and then soft shutdown and full shutdown. And it'd be interesting to see in the next few months as things turn back on again. This one I just saw in the last day or so, and this came from the folks down in carbon-free Mountain View. They found this article. And Alan, this points out what you were saying. For the hydrogen cycles that we're getting, you know, it's not terribly terribly large improvement. For the direct charging, though, you know, using batteries, and it's nice to look at this and see what the breakdown is on it. There's a number of articles in Scientific American on this as well. They talked about how the hydrogen cycle is difficult. Stanford's been working on a number of different chemistries that might change this. And in fact, there was something else recent about electrolysis, where somehow they improved electrolysis. I don't know how, but oops, in the wrong place. Trying to get on the next slide, it's not doing it. And why is it not doing it? There we go. There we go. Okay, fine. All right, so introducing Bryan Albee. And Bryan, I'll let you introduce yourself. Do you want me to run the slides for you, or you want to be able to push the buttons yourself? You can just tell me next slide and I'll do that.
That sounds good. Good morning. I found your meeting very interesting so far. I appreciate being here and talking a little bit about Sonoma County Transit in general. Kind of our most recent challenge, as with everyone's, with COVID-19 and our early efforts to transition the county bus system into electric vehicles. So next slide. So Sonoma County Transit was established on July 1st of 1980. So in a few weeks, we will be 40 years old. Back then, I don't think we would have guessed that we would be 40 years down the line and have the situation we have, which is quite a challenge, as we'll get into. But back in 1980, we started with one bus out in the Russian River area that came from Guerneville into Santa Rosa, and that was the start of Sonoma County Transit. Today, we're a 53 bus fleet for fixed route, which is Sonoma County Transit. Our paratransit fleet is about 32 vehicles right now. So all total, a little over 80 vehicles. Our local routes, we provide local routes in all the cities with the exception of Petaluma and Santa Rosa, which have their own services. We also have local routes in Guerneville and Monterey. Okay, next slide. And then we provide a number of intercity routes that connect all the cities and most communities within Sonoma County with either downtown Santa Rosa for connections to regional transit service provided by Golden Gate Transit, or SMART, or local services provided by Santa Rosa City Bus, or in Petaluma Transit. We also have a number of SMART connector routes we introduced 3 years ago when the SMART commenced service. Next. And then all that changed on March 18th. There we go. All that changed on March 18th. We reduced service to about 55% of what it was pre-COVID. We only have the main intercity routes operating now, and we'll get into some of the impacts. We have a history of thoroughly cleaning our buses every day, but that was stepped up considerably early in March. Every bus is thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. If a bus goes out in the morning, returns to the yard, and then goes out again later in the day, it's again clean and disinfected. And as of Thursday, we got a long-awaited fogger that after we clean and disinfect, we go through with the buses now with a disinfecting fog. And so a lot of the airlines are using this. This is equipment we've had on order since March 3rd, and it finally got here just Thursday. I mentioned we're at 55% of what we did pre-COVID, and today of the 29 routes we would have been operating, 13 are operating. Okay, next. And so our major routes that cross the county, north, south, east, and west, they are operating on their weekend schedules. Our SMART shuttles and some of our short intercity routes that only operated on weekdays, those services have all been suspended. And our local routes in all the cities that we serve, they're operating as normal. Okay. On March 21st, we went to only rear door boardings, and this allowed us to limit driver and passenger interaction, but also prohibited collecting fares. And so most of the transit systems have done this, at least systems that have a rear door on their buses. And we have driver guards barriers on order, which we don't think we're going to have installed now till September. So I would envision us not going or not having the ability to return back to collecting fares till much later in the fall. To comply with the local health officer orders since April 17th, all passengers using all of our services are required to wear facial coverings. And we've had a few instances, but overall, I would say probably 98% of our passengers have been embraced that, and now we're into it more than a month, and it's become the norm. Next. So our challenge now, as ridership is slowly coming back, is social distancing. And this is a very costly measure for us and any transit operator to mitigate, because to keep the 6-foot recommendations, the capacity of a 40-foot bus drops from 40 passengers to 10. So that's a 75% reduction in capacity. And then when you look at, we've reduced our service to about half of what it was. And so if ridership comes back quicker than we're able to introduce service, then that becomes a very costly challenge for us, because our funding isn't coming back that quick either. So this is something both on the paratransit side, which now the capacity of those vehicles is about 2. And the big buses, the 40-foot buses, the capacity is roughly 10. So that is a challenge, and something we are following daily on a trip-by-trip basis. And as we see ridership come back, we will probably be deploying extra buses for short periods of routes that where the typical rider load is in excess of 10. So what happens next? Restoration of our services will depend on demand, passenger demand coming back, social distancing requirements, and fiscal recovery. Transit is largely supported by sales tax revenues and passenger fares. Well, we're not collecting any passenger fares and won't be for a while, and we haven't been since mid-March. And sales taxes, at least right now, we're anticipating no more than 75% going into the new year. We'll be able to update that estimate in early July when we see what happened April through June, and hopefully that will mark the low point, and that give us some indication of what maybe to expect going forward. We think at the best right now anyway that a year from August of 2021, we might be back to 90% of the services we had in place pre-COVID. So let's talk about Sonoma County Transit and our vehicles and fuel and electric buses. We have a facility in South Santa Rosa, in Industry West Park off Todd Road. We've been here for 36 years. Like I said, we have a fleet of about 80 vehicles, paratransit and fixed route. We have about 5 or 6 acres in the back that is undeveloped. So we have room to grow in the future. A year ago, that looked a little more positive than it does right now, but we'll see where the future takes us. So go ahead, next slide. In 1996, we started transitioning the heavy-duty buses, the 30 and 40-foot buses, to natural gas power. And Sonoma County Transit is the only transit system in the Bay Area that went in this direction. Most of the other operators at that time, and still today, have stuck with diesel or diesel hybrids. So now, like us, are slowly transitioning to electric. But we've had natural gas. We started that transition in 1996. In 2006, all the 30 and 40-foot buses have been operated by natural gas. We have 4 compressors that serve 2 slow fill islands. The buses come in at night, they're cleaned, they're parked, and they're plugged in, and overnight they're fueled. And it takes about 3.5, 4 hours to fuel the fleet. Next. It hasn't always been the case, but in the last 10 years, natural gas prices have been very low. And then the federal government has had a program that for anyone, it's not really transit specific, that uses natural gas for a vehicle fuel. They refund the users 50 cents per gasoline gallon equivalent. So for us, when you combine the low cost of the gas and you take that credit, there's been some years that we haven't paid anything for fuel, which it saves us at least $1 million a year back when we were running regular service. But as we transition to new technologies, anything, it's hard to beat free fuel. and that's what we've had for some years. And you know, anything we can save $1 million a year, that just means more transit service out on the street. Next slide. So this is our standard bus. This is a 2020 bus. Our buses are built since, I guess, the last 6 years by Eldorado National down in Riverside, California. This is a 42-foot natural gas bus. If you go to the next slide, they're very well appointed. We have onboard Wi-Fi, which we've had for I think probably about 15 years now. Reclining seats, luggage racks, reading lamps, stop announcement systems, and USB charging ports, video security systems, methane detection systems. So we buy very well equipped buses because we will have them in service for 12 to 14 years. And a lot of our riders, because of the nature of the inner city service, are riding a longer period of time. So we try to equip them as well as we can. Next slide. So the future started for us, I guess, about 4 years ago. We started venturing into our first electric bus project. This is that bus that went into service in December of 2018. This is a BYD 30-foot coach. This vehicle has 22 seats. It 2 wheelchair positions, and we've equipped it much like the big buses. So go ahead in the next slide. Go to the next slide. Oh, okay.
It should be there.
There we go. There we go. Okay. We'll talk about the CARB regulations. Back in, I think it was late of 2018 as well. CARB passed a regulation that transit operators in the state need to start transitioning to electric or zero emission buses. That beginning in 2026, 25% of the new buses transit operators purchase must be zero emission. And zero emission can either be battery electric or fuel cell electric. Next slide. And then beginning in 2029, all new buses must be zero emission vehicles. And so buses generally have a life of, we have a federal life that we have to keep in service for 12 years, but often they go 14 or 15 years. But generally by 2040, if technology catches up and we have the improvements we need in the vehicles to run them as we do with vehicles we have now, by 2040, virtually all the transit buses in California will be zero emission. Next slide. So I mentioned this bus. This is our first bus, and it's in Sebastopol. And it operates about 95, 96 miles a day. It's very consistent in what it does. And it can go out there and back, and I think it comes back with a stated charge. I do have a chart in here of about 20%. And so, and this is why Sebastopol as a city was very interested in having the first electric bus. They work with us very closely. And because of its close proximity to our facility, it was a great candidate. That the bus isn't too far from us. We don't have a long deadhead in terms of hours or miles. We had a good operating profile, so it was a great place to put the first electric bus. So it goes out there. It doesn't need to charge during the day, and it comes back with about 20%. And what we saw, it's interesting, seasonally, when you look at the winter and we're using the heaters more, then we come back at about 17%. So it does use a little more energy, not a whole lot more.
Are those heaters or the heat pumps that they have in the BYD?
They're heaters. They're heaters.
Well, that's cheap then. If you got back with only a 3% drop, yeah.
Yeah. Next slide.
Hey Brian.
Yeah.
Are the batteries mounted up on the roof? Is that
In
when we
fact,
saw the picture where the batteries are located?
yeah, if we go back one slide, you can see the batteries in the first section right above the front door. That is the HVAC system, and then above the rear door, that is the radiator, the cooling system for the batteries, and the batteries are up on top of the bus. There's also a battery pack up above the engine compartment in the back. But these are cooled engine or cooled battery compartments. The inside of the bus looks like everything else in the fleet. We've equipped it similarly with the onboard Wi-Fi, stop announcements, USB charging ports and stuff. And really the bus is just a big phone charger. It has, can charge phones for days, months maybe, even if we just take it out and use it for that. And you'll notice one interesting thing about our fleet is we have the same fabric, and that is fabric that we bought back in 1986 with some new buses, and we have kept that fabric. So whether you get on an old bus or a new bus, all Sonoma County Transit buses look the same. And so that's been going on for 34 years. And that's a special run of fabric that comes out of England. They make just for us. It's gone out of production many years ago. So a little bit about our BYD 30-foot bus. It's the K7 model. You can see the specs. Top speed, 56. It's not a Tesla. And our stated range is 137. And so this is the difference we see with electric buses versus a 30-foot natural gas bus. It would have a range of probably 275 or 300 miles. So as we transition into an electric fleet, this is the big challenge, is going from vehicles that we don't worry about range to that being a critical part of how we deploy buses, where we charge buses, and how we deploy labor and the cost of charging and such. But this is the spec. University of San Francisco has several of these buses on their campus. They're used, I think Stanford University has several of these buses on campus. The reason we chose it is that on a lot of these routes that we plan to put these buses, we have small cutaway vehicles like Sebastopol. We're in the areas where the roads aren't very wide. So a standard heavy-duty 30-foot or 40-foot bus is 102 inches in width. This is 96, so it's a little narrower. It's similar to what we have on the paratransit fleet in terms of width, and it just seems well suited for the small town transit services. So, next slide.
And Brian, this bus has the motors and the wheels?
In the back, motors? Yes, rear wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How reliable have they been?
Well, that's been the most reliable part. We've had other things with the bus that we've had issues with, but not really the motors. This bus now, I think we just crossed 20,000 miles in the last couple of weeks, so it doesn't have a whole lot of miles on it, transit bus wise. But this is a typical. We do have some telematics on the bus where you can log in and see certain operations. This is from, I think this was from Wednesday, that it went out in service at 7:18 in the morning. Turn the bus on at 7:18 in the morning. Go to the next slide. You can see it goes out in service. It came back in the yard. It's about 7:30 in the evening. It got back here. It looks like they quickly cleaned it and then plugged it in, and you can see where it goes right back to 100%. So from 7:30 to 10:30 or 10:20, so almost 3 hours it took to charge. So when you compare the refueling I talked about earlier with the natural gas buses versus this bus, it's almost the same in terms of time. And we will use the strategy, as we did with many years with the natural gas fleet,
that we only had half the capacity to fuel, so we switched the buses around at night. We'll do the same thing with electric buses. So one charger will serve 2 buses, and so ultimately now we're looking to have 3 within the next probably 3 months. That'll serve 6 buses. So the next slide. So we have 2 more of the same type of buses being built down in Lancaster, which came up earlier in today's meeting at the BYD factory. 2 buses, they were to be here in June, but because of COVID, the plant obviously shut down, and they're now retooling. We may not see these now till September, but they're getting close. These buses, because our charger program has kind of been delayed because of COVID, we think we're going to deploy these in Rona Park and Cotati. That's close to our yard as well, and they can operate there without needing to be recharged during the day. We have 2 more of these. We plan to place an order here within the next month or so, and we should see those in summer of next year.
Brian, when these charge, are they charging DC, or are they using 3-phase, or are they using,
these are DC, and they're 80 kilowatt chargers. If we go to the next slide, I think where these buses are going, we started a program 2 years ago now that in some of the small cities where we have the local services, Sebastopol, Windsor, Healdsburg, Cloverdale, and out in Sonoma Valley, and Guerneville and Monterey, we have fare-free routes. And so all those local routes are free. Passengers don't pay a fare. It's been very popular and has increased the ridership collectively on those routes a little over more than 50%. We've had some routes that have been much higher than that amount. But this has been a very positive program, and what we've gotten is the local communities, that started with Sebastopol, they've agreed to subsidize the fares. And so it keeps the transit system whole. For a relatively small investment, the cities can say, we have free transit, and we've seen an increase in ridership. And so it's been very positive, and this is where we're going to put the first 5 of the electric buses. So one's in Sebastopol, kind of interim basis, they'll be in Rona Park, but then after that, be Sonoma Valley, Healdsburg, Windsor, and Cloverdale. So I mentioned as we can go to the next one there. You can go to the next slide. There we go.
You want to be? Oh, yeah, okay, good.
That one's fine. So as I mentioned, as we transition into going from a CNG fleet to an electric fleet, we go from buses with really a range we never worried about on the big 40-foot buses. They have at least a 450-mile range. We don't think about range really, to buses like our electric bus that now has 137, which really with electric vehicles, as you probably know, you should really consider about 80% of that number. And so we will be looking to kind of a countywide strategy of charging locations. And as we start with the smaller buses going to the cities I mentioned, we're looking at a couple methods. And one thing to note before we leave this slide is with natural gas, we have the compressors, we have a gas line, we have a lot of infrastructure to fuel the natural gas buses. And we've had that now all for 20 some years. If this equipment doesn't work, we don't operate. And so it is every day, it's the top priority to be sure that all our compressors work, everything is working, so we can fuel the fleet. And we have for many years we had 2 compressors, now we have 4, so we have a fair amount of redundancy. But this was one of the chances we took with going with natural gas many years ago, is that we didn't have any place else to fuel, so it always has to work. But you can see all that equipment there, all the infrastructure that goes with natural gas. The benefit is financially is that, like I said earlier, there are some years we don't pay for fuel because of the rebates and the low cost of the gas. But on the right side of the screen, you know, we go from all that equipment to a simple charger. And I think it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, the charger is not so much the issue, it's getting the service to your facility. Someday, you know, we replicate what we have now, 50 some buses, electric. That is a huge amount of power that needs to be brought into our facility here, which we don't have the capabilities for that now. I mentioned earlier, we're going to go to 3 chargers later this year. This is the first one. We'll have 2 more. And I think we can accommodate maybe 2 more after that on our existing service, our existing panel here. And then after that, we have to make some big improvements in terms of getting more power here. The 5, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's discussions through an organization called Green Tech Media and some others about that issue. And a lot of it's going to end up being solved by storage because the buses are gone during the day. You're going to store the power all day long and then you're going to dump it into the buses when they get back into the yard.
Yeah.
So different storage methods become less expensive than bringing the power to you.
Yeah, that's right. And we also have, because of the intercity nature of our service, back pre-COVID anyway, a lot of buses go out at 5 in the morning, but then they come back at 9:30 or 10 till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we could charge overnight. We can charge midday. It really will be charging anytime a bus has that opportunity, and so that mitigates some of that. But yeah, it'll require a whole rethink of things we never had to think about before in terms of deploying vehicles, charging vehicles, the labor costs associated with delays with buses being charged out on the road, things like that. But the benefit is, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. You can finish that and I'll ask questions.
Well, the benefit is we have all the infrastructure on the natural gas side and a much simpler setup on the electric side.
Now, and there was in the chat, there's a question from Torque. Why not smaller buses? When we deployed the buses for Mountain View, we used a smaller bus. We put half a dozen of them there. They've been running for about 1 million miles now. And they don't always get full. But you know, what about smaller buses for the local routes? For this,
yeah, that's what we're doing. We are putting the smaller buses on the local routes. You know, the challenge now is with social distancing. That may be difficult for a period of time. We're assuming that will change over time, certainly over the life of the buses. But we are putting smaller buses on the local routes. The large bus shown here, those are the buses that operate from Petaluma, Santa Rosa to Cloverdale, and then from West County to Sonoma. And over the course of their trip, there are times when they have maybe 20 or more riders on them. So we need the higher capacity. And when you look at the cost of operating the bus, it really has nothing to do with the size. It's all about the same. So let's go to the next slide. This is what I was talking about, is that because of the limited range, now we have to think about charging while we're out on the road. And so we're looking at 2 technologies. And if we go to the next slide, we can see. There we go. So we have what we're looking for, and this may change. Initially, when we were looking for kind of the next wave, this would be Sonoma Plaza for the local routes, up in Windsor at the Windsor Depot, the Cloverdale City Hall stop, and then up in Healdsburg next to the Safeway Shopping Center. Those would be the local buses like this, the 30-foot BYD coach, that over the course of the day, it'll have to charge just enough to get back. So we don't have the need to recharge every trip, but just be sure that at the end of the day, there's enough juice in the bus to get the bus back to the yard, and we fully charge overnight. So the least expensive way to do this is to buy these chargers. These chargers are about $20,000, so they're not terribly expensive. But as you can see, you would have this on the public sidewalk, you would have the cords, you'd have to secure this in some fashion. So that's the downside with this. If we go to the next slide, you can see this is the slide we saw earlier. This is up in Washington, small operator with the inductive charging. And what has kind of changed over the last few months is initially this equipment wouldn't fit. We were looking at another manufacturer of the equipment. It's Wave Technologies versus this is Momentum. The Wave Technology equipment wouldn't work on a 30-foot bus. It was just too much equipment. There's not enough room for all the equipment that inductive charging requires. Momentum, which is used up in Washington, has a much smaller footprint. So we're kind of changing that. Maybe we won't have the standalone chargers like in our yard in the cities I mentioned that will just do inductive. The downside with this is that we go from a $25,000 charger with kind of some logistical issues to use to this, which is very simple. The bus drives up, positions itself correctly at the stop, driver hits a button, and you can see underneath the bus, those are the plates that receive the charge. That can all be done very easily, but it has a cost. The equipment in the ground is about $200,000. The equipment on the bus is about $50,000. So that is the difference.
There was a company that deployed down in Southern California that used the overhead. I forgot which city it was. I thought it was Lancaster, but it might not have been. Do you know of that company and what's happened with them?
Well, it's Proterra was the manufacturer.
I thought it was Proterra. Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of showcased that in some of the early buses, and it's infrastructure that's out there that can get hit, can get out of alignment, and damaged, and that has all happened with that. And so they still offer that. Some places still use it. I think because there is a direct connection with that system, they get a much faster charge. With inductive, like your phone, it doesn't charge as quickly as when you plug it in. So there's benefits with that too. My preference would be inductive. Like I said, we just need to get the bus back to the yard at the end of the day. Any infrastructure out there that can get damaged or misaligned, we would want to avoid that. And when you look at the life of the bus, at least 12 years, we want equipment that will last a long time without a whole lot of external repairs or damage. So if you go to the next slide, this is where kind of our thinking is now. As we deploy these buses over many, many years now, we will have local chargers or charging for local buses in Cloverdale, Healdsburg, Windsor, and over in Sonoma. And then for the inner city buses, it's mainly the kind of the four corners of the county in terms of our service area: Cloverdale, Petaluma to the south, Monterey to the west, and Sonoma to the east. And so we're hoping that over time the 40-foot buses get to a range of 250, 300. We could live with that. Like say right now we have 450. That's more than we need, much more than we need in a day. But if we can get to a 300 mile range 40-foot bus, that would work for us. Yeah, but still would require these charging locations throughout the county. And so this is kind of the direction that we will be going. At least we see in 2020. But going out 20 years. This is what we see. This is what will need to be required to operate 50 electric buses throughout the county. So we'll see. Technology changes very quick, and we'll see. In 5 years where we're at, let alone 10, and then the 20.
And Alan might be able to speak to this. But one of the things that we've been tracking on the club was the power at each one of the DC charge stations, and Tesla's been doing this, and we may see this in the buses as well. If you get up to 150, 300 kilowatts, if you can get the service there, or even if you can't get the service, you can get storage, you could drive to the route and dump it in and then continue on.
Yeah. And even with these buses, you can plug them in. You can plug two buses into together, and they equalize the charge.
Yeah.
So that was the benefit with the DC charging on these. So, you know, it's still really early, and all this is going to evolve, and hopefully it can only get better. And that's the direction we need it to go in.
Woody, June, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Thanks so much, Brian. Great presentation. I'm aware that down in Lancaster with Lancaster Choice Energy, the Community Choice Energy Agency down there, they're working with Antelope Valley Transit and their electric bus system, to help them with special rates and charging dynamics, charging time of day and stuff that works for the bus system. I'm just wondering, have you been engaging with Sonoma Clean Power here in Sonoma County on what kind of advantages they might be able to offer for charging, charging infrastructure, the infrastructure you were talking about, plus, rates and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we have, and about a year ago, they supported a study that looked at our fleet, Santa Rosa City Bus, Petaluma Transit, and even Mendocino Transit Authority's fleet, kind of thinking about in the future what we will need in terms of electric service at our facilities, in our case, kind of around the county. So they've been a very good organization to work with. There has been a lot of discussion on the state side, on the PUC side, to give some exemptions or some credits to transit operators to meet the state requirement in an efficient manner. And like I say, for us, because of the natural gas cost, and say in some years we don't pay anything for fuel or very little, that anything we do electric-wise, will have a cost. And really, it's not so much the cost, as I understand it, the electricity, it's to the demand charges. And so over the course of the day, especially when we're charging en route, we need to charge when we're there. We can't wait for a certain time of day. And so I think the demand charges are really where the costs are, and that's really where the efforts are being discussed on the state level with the PUC, is to give us some break with those.
Well, and that's also where batteries are very helpful to offset some of those demand charges.
Great,
Right.
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Alan, again, from attending those green tech media seminars, there's also, of course, something when I was in college, this was a lot of years ago, flywheel storage as well, which is a lot less expensive, less faster to spin up, and then you can dump a lot faster too.
Yeah.
So a lot of those can be options that are available. It's an interesting industry. A lot of fun challenges to come through. Brian, thank you very much. Do folks have any questions of Brian at this point?
Can we all clap?
Yeah.
I have some questions.
Oh, good. You have a question? Yeah.
Hey, Brian, thanks. John here. I was curious about the whole subsidy question. You know, it's like, it can't be true that we're just, leaving, natural gas and not getting any subsidies from electric. Is there a chance that the same per mile subsidies would be available for electric? It almost seems like it'd be more reasonable to do that, for that to be the case. So that's one question.
Well, there aren't right now, but we will see. The natural gas has been on a federal level. Electricity is not really it's more of a state and local type of thing. So the efforts are with the PUC and the state. I wouldn't see such a good deal as we get with natural gas in terms of, because the energy is, or the fuel is inexpensive to begin with. Then we get the credit, and our costs are like I say, little or nothing. That would be great. That would certainly help, because the transition to electric, you have the cost of the electricity, but you have the huge capital costs. Electric buses will cost, a big natural gas bus are 42 footers. there are about 650,000 comparable electric bus right now anyway. It was about 200,000 plus more similarly equipped. So you've got the higher cost of the capital investment in the vehicle, and then you go from a vehicle that has maybe at best, today about a third, maybe by next 5 years, maybe it'll be half, but still you have to wonder, well, do we need 2 for 1? That is something we just can't accommodate. And then you've got all the infrastructure improvements on the facility side and then the charging side. But once those are in, once that's been established, then you really don't have much maintenance, unlike with natural gas. So there's trade-offs throughout the transition, and it'll just, fortunately we have a fair amount of time to this, but time does pass, and we don't see a lot of subsidies for on the fuel side, the electric side, and even subsidies from the state to acquire vehicles. Although anything is helpful, it's not paying for a tremendous portion of the vehicles. So.
And Brian, I have a question. I wrote to you about a year ago, and was wondering what kind of maintenance issues you ran into with the vehicles. Now you have a year worth of experience. Okay, what kind of maintenance issues have you run into with the vehicles? I know Stanford had problems with the motors. That's why I asked about that, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, we've the problems we've had with the bus, and actually it was back of the factory for a while, were with doors and with interlocks on the brakes, of all things. It hasn't really been so much on the electrical side. So when it's here, it operates, and now it's been a while that it's been back, and it's operating as a normal bus, which is what the situation we want. It's acting like everything else, but we don't have oil changes. Brake life is much longer because of regenerative braking. So and we don't have a transmission. So there's a lot of equipment on. That's one of the benefits here, obviously, is there's much less equipment on the bus to go wrong once you get it figured out, the new technology. And that's the thing I think all bus operators are really in need of. And the manufacturers need to really step up and train us how to work on these vehicles. That's been the lacking part. So when you only have 1 or 2 or 3, okay, the manufacturer comes right out and takes care of whatever problem we have. But when we got 10, 20, and eventually 50, we need to know how to fix them. And that's.
I'm just going to warn you something. Having worked on the maintenance side for a manufacturer, often the manufacturer doesn't know how to maintain the vehicle.
Well, and sometimes that's the case, but I think with this new technology, they don't want us touching it, and so that's something that has to improve relatively short order, in my opinion.
There are also be a service life.
I'm sorry?
And could there also be a longer service life with the vehicles because you have less parts on the bus to maintain and less servicing you have to do? Would the life of the vehicle, the service life of the vehicle be extended?
Well, I would think so. When you take the bus apart and you think about the pieces, the motors have probably a much longer than like I said earlier, a transit bus generally has a 12 to 14-year service life. With the kind of mileage we're putting on the Sebastopol bus, it could last much longer than that period of time. You do a battery change, which the manufacturer, in our case here, they project that at 12 years, the batteries will have 80% of their capacity. So they will last much longer than 12 years. It may just require a refresh of the interior, and if the batteries are 80%, that would probably be fine. And so we should get a much longer life. And that's one of the benefits going forward with the bigger buses over time. Maybe transit buses now will last 15, 16 years. But structurally, they will last much, much longer.
And the maintenance guys like them a lot better down at the ABC bus company because they could go home clean every day.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, any more questions?
Yeah, Brian, is anybody in the bus industry looking at using CNC and using fuel cells to electric to run electric motors?
Yeah. Well, the manufacturer that builds our 40-foot buses, El Dorado, they don't have an electric bus, battery electric bus on the market right now, but they've been building fuel cell buses for a number of years. I know Palm Springs has a few of their buses. There's a few back east with operators I'm not familiar with. But that was the thing, is that we could take the same bus we have today and get a fuel cell version. And we did look at fuel cells. And just real quickly, the benefit with going with a fuel cell hydrogen bus is that we would have similar range to what we have with natural gas, but you have all that infrastructure that goes with hydrogen. But that would all be here at the transit facility. That would not be at the remote charging stations, which they would probably go away because we have similar range with what we do with natural gas. The downside is we're dealing with hydrogen, and unlike natural gas, where we have a pipeline that comes in here, we have a very good system. Hydrogen would have to be trucked in. And so some operators are going in that direction. I know AC Transit has had hydrogen for a number of years, but I think at least in the United States, not so much internationally. I think it's almost 50-50 battery electric and hydrogen when you look at it on the global scale. But in the United States, it's much more biased towards electric. And I think that's because that's what the public is used to now. As we accept electric vehicles, that's become a norm. Electric buses are a norm. We're not there with hydrogen vehicles.
Well, my question was converting CNC to electricity. I'm not talking about hydrogen fuel cells. I'm talking about fuel cells that convert CNC, which you already have. You have the infrastructure, and then the bus would run off electric motors like they have, but you provide the electricity through a cell that would use compressed natural gas. That was my question.
Yeah, actually, we are interested in that, and a good example of that is the new TWA hotel at JFK. It's a new hotel they built at the old TWA terminal. That they're off the grid with that hotel, and they are taking natural gas and producing electricity that's powering their facility. Some people are doing that, and certainly with the natural gas we have here at the facility, it's a cost that we're used to, and that would still make available that federal rebate, because ultimately the gas is producing electricity that's going in a bus, so it's still going towards a vehicle fuel. We could put in a small plant that's powered by natural gas that creates electricity, and that's what goes out to the buses. Yeah, and that would be something, of course, much further out when we get into doing the larger buses. But yeah, that could be done. That is something that we have given some consideration to.
I'd interject there that the network of climate scientists that are studying the continued increase in greenhouse gases now say that natural gas is the primary cause of increased GHGs in the atmosphere. It's no longer gasoline or oil. So that's the reason why. That's the reason why climate people like myself, who follow the science closely, have been focused on natural gas for quite a long time now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
A couple other questions, if I may. When I see the big compressors that are used, I'm with natural gas. Do you have data about what the percentage of energy in the gas that's used it takes to compress the fuel? And is that a significant thing? Also, just kind of interested in how much those compressors cost, when we're comparing that to infrastructure for inductive charging and so forth. And then a little side note, do you know of any research on the impact of inductive charging on pacemakers for occupants? Yeah.
I'm sorry, my connection dropped out. If you could repeat your question.
Okay.
It wasn't just yours. Everybody seemed to lose.
Okay, a two-part, just commenting on the compressors in the natural gas facility, kind of how much they cost when compared to the infrastructure for inductive charging, and also how much energy they actually use to compress the gas, and does that come from natural gas? And then aside, part C, you know, any impact on pacemakers in the vehicles from inductive charging?
No, not that we know of. But there's been the question that, you know, if anything on the inductive charging, anything passes underneath those plates, it stops the whole process. So it does have a sensor that if the area is clear, the bus is in the right position, the driver is authorized charging, it'll work. But if there's anything that once that's started that comes in front of those plates, it stops. It stops. In terms of the cost of the infrastructure for natural gas, you know, over the years, that has probably cost our most recent project, about almost 10 years ago now, was about $1.5 million, $1.7 million. So it's not so much the capital cost. I think the capital cost for the similar electric infrastructure will cost more, but the maintenance will be less. There's really not much maintenance, I understand, once you get that all installed. But then you have the demand charges, you know, things we've talked about. On the compressor side, you have maintenance, and those work every day, and you get people here in the middle of the night if they don't work. And so that's really now the cost, and it's always been the cost with the compressors. And I think the compressors take about somewhere around 8 to 10% of the gas that we use to compress the gas.
And Bryan, on the demand charges, has anybody ever approached the PCUC and said, "Hey, we're doing what you told us to do for CARB reasons. Why isn't there a schedule for us that doesn't have the peak demand charges?"
Well, I think that's what's being negotiated now.
Okay.
With the California Transit Association, now that we have this regulation from CARB, and as we start ramping up the number of vehicles, that becomes all that more important.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
And I think a lot of transit.
Go ahead and finish that. I'm sorry.
I was going to say a lot of transit systems like us, they're buying 1 to 5 vehicles. And so at this point, as we slowly enter this, it's not such a big issue. But when we get into, you know, a third or more of the fleet, then certainly that becomes something that we really need assistance on.
Yeah, and I've run into some commercial concerns where, well, you're going to have UPS now and Postal Service. And one company I've worked with is a Ameripride, which is now owned by somebody else, but they ended up buying 40, 50 electric trucks, and the demand charges become an issue for them. Because they're trying to schedule. Actually, there is a company out of Georgia that schedules your charging systems so that you can reduce your demand charges by charging the vehicles at different times, looking at the profile of, you know, the batteries have a profile to them, so they work through the profile in order to get them out of time, but not have the demand charge peak in. Anybody else? All right, Bryan, thank you very much. We would all applaud in the room, but with a lot of people on mute, it doesn't. Yeah, we can. Thanks a lot. You covered a lot of stuff for us. We'd be interested in continuing to follow it too. We'd love to keep following what's happening.
All right.
All right. I'd like to see it move as quickly as possible.
Let's check in a year or so. All
Okay,
right.
great.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Just a few things, more stuff to read about. This one I just picked up just before before the meeting, there's a Wall Street Journal review of the future of electric vehicles. It's 26 minutes long. It's a YouTube video. And it has to do with trucks and where all that's going to go. I haven't seen all of the video yet, so I put that link there. These other two links have been here for a bit longer. We have no presentation on deck for the next meeting. So if anybody's got a presentation or knows somebody that we can contact for a presentation, let's do it. We have lots of ideas for presentations. They're still there in the collab site. Next meeting would be July 11th. And if Bryan and John are up for it, maybe we can try to do it with our masks on. You guys get back to us on that. Anything else from anybody? You know, we didn't have, sorry about that. We didn't have, and I must have skipped over the slide, to hear from the peanut gallery. So we have a few minutes left here. Anybody have stuff to talk about?
Jerry, I have a question. We had a couple of replies on the NBEAA discuss email thread, but I think somewhere in your slide deck you said we didn't have any messages, and I'm wondering if people need to more purposefully subscribe to get that NBEAA discuss email going correctly.
Well, I went to the site at the time that I put that on there, and there were no postings. So at the time I did it was probably 10 days ago.
So
is there anything else?
Woody sent an email and John sent an email, and I'm just wondering if technically we have, you know, something going on there that we could follow up on and report back out.
Well, we can take a look at it again. I don't know if Lola's still on, but we can take a look at it and see if technically we screwed up. I've noticed a couple other things with Google recently. A few things changed. I mean, they're subtle. They don't even say they're changing. One of them was I was sending messages out. Maybe it was the way I was doing it for people to respond to. Now I want to ask a question on this too, of news items. And it turned out that when they were responding, it was being sent to NBEAA 2019 instead of to the NBEAA team. I figured out how to make that happen. And maybe I sent the messages out as myself before. But does it make sense for me to send that message about news items to club instead of team so that more people who see news can send news in?
Yeah, we could do it.
I would agree with that.
Either
Do
way.
you agree with that? Okay. Yeah. I know
just
we want
one
to keep the number of
email.
messages down. Yeah. It's just one email. I won't email a month. Okay. I'll forward that out to club so we can get more news.
Just one quick request, I guess, since we're sort of in a state of flux as to which media we're using, maybe adding just a whole list of what is current, you know, kind of like the Zoom invitations have all the different options. If you just say, you know, chat is here, recording to the meeting is here.
Oh, I mean at the beginning of the meeting?
No, it's just like a big giant footer, kind of like the Zoom invitations have all the different ways you can get to the meeting. If you just have what's currently what we've decided on where the different aspects of communication go to, you know, what is the current address and so on.
Okay. One slide at the very beginning, it talks about what the groups are and stuff like that.
Yeah, and just maybe a closing or an invitation email that has all that in it, like a giant footer in your announcement email. And then we'll copy that out until we get a revision on that.
Okay, I'm only half understanding. So, but you and I can go back and forth on it. I understand part of it. To be honest, you know, the Zoom is still continues to be a challenge for me. I see we've got 22 chats here, and I haven't been able to read them as we're going along because even with 3 screens in front of me, I don't have enough footprint.
I think what Brian was asking is that you send out a separate email, just like Alan does, announcing when the next meeting is, and an invitation that has those links on that email. So I can keep that email, but I want to link into that. So it's not part of the screen we're showing here on the Zoom meeting, but an actual email. I can just touch that and go to that discuss group or whatever.
Oh, well, Lowell or Cecilia can jump in on this one. I think the solution, we can put it on the presentation, but the real solution is as we improve the website, those links will all be there. And the link that would be on the presentation is, this is where you go to the website. That will always have the live links. And this way, anything we put in there, if somebody looks at the document, they would get one which will work instead of something that used to work. If they look at a previous presentation. Does that make sense, Lowell?
Yeah, sure. You know, but I think that maybe before we get to that point, and that's working, that a follow-up email, you know, after the meeting with some of these links might be more accessible. But that is the intention of the website, is to be this one-stop place where you can get everything that is relevant, and you know, get an opportunity to link to it.
Bernie, how deep is the snow? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
That picture's a couple years old, but I've been out a couple times this year, a couple weeks before our COVID attack.
Any other input? Otherwise, we'll end the meeting, and I will do my best to try to get it into YouTube again. And I did send the message out. I thought I sent the message out to Club last time of where the YouTube was. So I was surprised that nobody had actually tried it.
It took me a while. It took me 30 minutes to figure out how to get on to this meeting tonight, this morning. And of course, it was just a matter of going back and finding Alan's message from a week ago where the link was.
So the other thing that we will have, and it probably was there already, Cecilia, you might comment on it. The editing for the website is challenging right now. And once Lowell and Mike and Cecilia get it moved someplace else, we can do these things faster. But we'll probably have the link right there on the web page. So you won't have to go look for, I had to look for Alan's message too in order to open the meeting. And then I have to look someplace else to find the password and whatever else so I can be the leader. But we'll get all of that, at the very least, how you get into the meeting onto the web page. Does that change each time? Does the link change each time, Alan?
I tried, first I found an older link from older and it did not work. So I'm guessing it does change.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you can't find your button, Alan. Forget it. Just use sign language, Alan. All right.
Comment before we go.
Sure.
First, thanks, Jerry, you and Alan and everybody who's worked on this to get this going. I know it takes work, and I'm not doing it, so I appreciate it. I also want to say that regarding next month, I'm honestly concerned from the Thunderstruck perspective. We're on a kind of a 2 people per shop basis right now.
Okay. All right.
The COVID thing, and to get 20 people in there is a little uncomfortable for me personally.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't be there. And I don't know what other people feel. Just so you know that I kind of doubt that's what I'm going to want to do, but
okay.
Somebody else wants to do it, maybe. That's my.
That's fine. That would be the reading we want to get from you guys. So we'll plan on doing it online again next time.
One last thing, I think it'd be good for us to get together, folks who are involved with technology, to discuss best practices, how we can secure meetings, discussing how public we want things to be, for people concerned about privacy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, let's do that. When I posted the first YouTube, I made it private, And then I got a lot of comments back saying, well, why is it private? Why isn't it public? How do other people see it? Stuff like that. So yeah, the subtlety of one form versus another form is somewhat lost on me. Because in the discussions, when they talk about private versus public, if you have the link, do you have to belong to something, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, you might, for instance, put the links for the YouTubes on our webpage so that people just don't search in YouTube to find it and get it, or maybe we want that because we want to advertise it. And I don't know if we can do it by channel or if we do it by posting.
So who is on the team?
Wait, say that again, John. Sorry.
I'm just curious, who's on the team to figure out deal with Cecilia's question?
Yeah, I'd like to
Lowell, you
be
want to answer that?
part of that discussion.
Okay, what was the question again? Who is on the team? What was the question? Who was on the team?
Yeah, we have a team which is called NBEAA-Web. Hang on a second. We have a team which is called NBEAA-Team, Web. And those people are the ones that are on that team. Others can join.
A lot of feedback coming from Woody.
Yeah.
Did anybody hear what I just said? Okay, fine. There's a team called NBEAA-Team. -Web. And that's the team that's been working on the web and that would discuss these things. I think that's the appropriate place. And Lowell's leading that team right now, so if nothing's getting done, it's his fault.
That's true. And yes, I have been otherwise occupied, and I will refocus on this issue in the coming weeks.
Yeah, because I was also going to point out, if anything does get done, yeah, Cecilia gets the credit.
Sonia, were you saying that you wanted to be involved?
That's true. Am I saying I want to be involved?
No, Sonia.
June said she wanted to be involved.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right, then we're going to make that a wrap because I think we've discussed what we need to discuss. I do miss having the meetings. I do miss the donuts because, Mike, you do find the best place to get donuts. But here we are. I don't want to wait till August 2021. That's, I'm hoping we can pass this. All right, everybody.
All right.
Have a good
Thanks, Thanks, everybody.
We'll communicate.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Everyone.